Week 15 of the fantasy football season. And here's a few kickers I have as sleepers this week. The first guy, Greg Joseph of the Minnesota Vikings. So definitely a down season here for Greg Joseph compared to what he did last season where he was a top 5 kicker in fantasy points. So the last few games here for him, Week 11 versus Dallas 3, Week 12 versus New England 9, Week 13 versus the Jets 12, which 2 good games in a row. Week 14 at Detroit 6, but this week here back indoors at home for the Minnesota Vikings versus the Indianapolis Colts that give up the 16th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. So right here, we know Joseph's got a big boot, but this season, for whatever reason, he's missed just a bunch of 40, 50 yarders, just wide right or just missing it. So right now, available in 80% of fantasy leagues. And if you need a kicker in deeper leagues, he's a kicker I have as a sleeper. The next guy is Chase McLaughlin of the Indianapolis Colts, staying in the same game. So right here, good matchup on paper, obviously in Minnesota, indoor game. And the Vikings give up the most fantasy points to kickers on the season. So McLaughlin the last few weeks, he's been putting up solid ball games. Week 11 versus Philly 12, Week 12 versus Pittsburgh 7, Week 13 at Dallas 9, and this week here at Minnesota, indoor game, and giving up the most points to kickers. And this offense over there doesn't punch the ball in the end zone as well a lot here is this Indianapolis Colts team. So right now available in 95% of fantasy leagues here is McLaughlin. He's definitely a kicker that could have a decent ball game and is a sleeper this week. And the third and final kicker I have as a sleeper this week here is Pinero of the Carolina Panthers. Eddie Pinero, he's been pretty decent for a Panther team. That's another team that doesn't score a lot of touchdowns, and they got to settle for field goals. And this week here in a grinded-out type of ball game, I could see a little bit more of the same versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Week 11 at Baltimore 3, Week 12 versus Denver 12, and Week 14 at Seattle 13. So the Steelers give up the 10th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. And right now, Eddie Pinero available in 99% of fantasy leagues here. And this could be a field goal type of game we saw last week for the most part with Baltimore and the same Pittsburgh Steelers team. So I think Pinero could get 3 or 4 opportunities, and he's definitely a kicker that I have as a sleeper this week. So that's a few kickers I have as sleepers for Week 15 of the fantasy football season.